We'll start the reassembly by inserting the valve into the tube. The valve is placed with the valve stem toward the rear, and the port, the exit port, the port's on one side and then it's a threaded hole on the other. The exit port will line up with the top exit port on the air tube. So we'll just line it up and we'll slide it in, and we're looking to line up that hole, the port, with the hole in the breech. Once we have that, we can turn it over and we can place that small screw in the valve. And it's kind of tricky because it's a very short little screw, so you just have to kind of work with it. The valve wants to kind of move around a little bit, so we'll try to get it going here. It is a little bit tricky to get started. So we'll see if we can do it. The valve wants to move around in its hole, and this has to be pretty well perfectly lined up for it to get seated. Let me try a different screwdriver here. You want one that fits the screw really tightly. There we go. And that will keep the screw from wobbling around. So we'll tighten that down. Next, we'll put in the seal on the top. The seal is just a rubber ring. Now what I usually do when I assemble these is I usually put a little bit of glue around the upper part of the port before I insert it into the breech. But in this case, I'm just going to reassemble the gun as it came apart. There's a collar. See if I can get a close up of that. There's a collar. You got the long side and a short side. The short side goes downward into the air tube. So the taller side will stick up and fit into the breech. So now we'll take the breech and the barrel and we'll line up the barrel port and the breech port, and then we're going to just, I'm sorry, we've got to do something else first. We've got to put the striker in. Striker has to go into its spot, and then the pin. And we're going to leave it toward the back. You don't want to push it all the way forward. You want to leave it a little bit toward the back, so that when you line the port hole up, when you line that port and that hole up, the bolt will be a little bit forward. So I'm pushing the bolt just a little bit forward, so that the pin will slide into its slot, and the port will line up with the barrel. And you just work them together, and then kind of clamp them with your hand. So I'm pinching it together. We'll pull the bolt back, and we'll put in that small 4/48 screw. It's kind of a tight fit in there. And again, I use a really good tool so that it doesn't strip. Got to get the right size tool. Now what I do when I'm putting a steel breech back together is I use a clamp. I use a quick grit clamp, and I clamp the breech together and then tighten that screw down, and that pre-tensions the seal, that rubber seal underneath there, and keeps you from having to tighten that screw down too tight, because when you release the clamp, it creates tension on the screw. So, you know, I don't really know how much to tighten it down. I just have a feel for it after doing a bunch of these. You don't want it too tight or you'll strip it, but you want it tight enough that it'll seal. Next thing we'll do is we'll put the striker spring in the back of the action, and then we're going to slide the end cap on, and we're just going to hold it. We're going to look through it and line the hole up. So we're looking through there and see if we can turn it, and we can line that hole up. And then we're going to drop the rear breech screw and the rear sight into it, and we'll tighten that down. Not too tight, because we're gonna adjust our sights, so we'll loosen that just a little bit, just enough to hold that, to keep that end cap in place. I'm going to slide our barrel band on. There's a little dimple right here for the set screw, so slide that down. We'll use our heck is it, our 5/64. Line that up. We're not going to tighten this down very much. It really doesn't need to be very tight. Just till you feel it start to snug up. It's really not supporting anything. It's just there to keep the barrel from twisting back and forth. So we'll just get it so it's just snug. Kind of want to try to keep that parallel across there. This gap, I'm going to try to make that gap parallel, especially if you're using a steel breech. We'll pop the front side on now. It just slides on, and then you just wiggle it on. And you may sight down the thing and make sure that the sight is straight up and down. This one's kind of crooked. There's a flat on the barrel, and there's a flat on the inside of the sight, and that's to try to help keep it a little bit vertical, but you still need to sight down the gun, and you might need to twist that sight a little bit to keep it vertical. And then I take it and I just tap it on the bench to seat the sight. You want to check for smooth operation of the bolt. Make sure that it's operating smoothly and it feels like it locks up tightly. You put in the fill cap. Now we'll do the grip frame. I always put the spring in to the striker last, but we put the sear and its pin in position. And then we take the safety button and we put the safety button in the hole, and then holding it with your back finger to keep it from falling out. I got this finger back here holding it. We'll take our trigger blade. I'm going to drop it right up in that little slot of the safety. And the red side of the safety, the side that's red, see the little red line there, that will be on the left side, and the trigger will fit up into the slot of the safety when it's correctly positioned. And I'm holding that safety in the back with my finger. I'm going to put that spring washer back on the pin of the trigger blade. And now we can put the cover back on. So I'm holding holding the safety up with my finger, and we just drop the frame down. You want to make sure that the safety works. Now it won't have the detent in it because we haven't put that in yet, but just make sure that the safety moves back and forth. And if you hold the sear down, you should be able to feel the sear moving back and forth with the trigger. And then we'll put in our 1/16 screws. There's 3 of them. Now, by the way, when I have them apart, I always do a trigger job. I always polish out the nose of the sear. This part of the sear right here, I polish that out, and I take a little bit off the top. I've got a little fixture I use to grind that, and I use a different spring and a plunger. But the spring now, there's a little box boss right up in here. We're going to drop the spring up in there, and then we're going to just pop it onto the perch, little spring perch there. And so now you want to check the operation of it. It's working fine. Safety's on now and it won't go. Safety's off and it works. Okay, lastly,